Okay, so we are live. Welcome, 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 everybody, to this edition of our Wednesday Spotlight. My name is Teresa Sanderson, and I have with me today our special guest, Toni Therrien, who is from Phoenix, Arizona. And every week on the Wednesday Spotlight, if you've never tuned in before, we feature one women entrepreneur who has a history of depression or who is living with depression. And we do this for a couple of reasons. Number one, we want people to know and understand what depression looks like, because a lot of times it is that smiling face right next to you, and you just may never know it. So we want to try to raise awareness about that. And we also want to support and encourage the growth of women-owned businesses that have been impacted by mental illness. So, Toni, I understand you is a resident of Phoenix, Arizona. She's got two
Yep.
children at home, one with special needs, and she's a diva of graphic design. It sounds like website design and all of these kind of things. So, welcome, welcome, Toni.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Sure thing, sure thing. So, tell us a little bit, if you would, just about yourself
Mhm.
and your business. A little bit about you.
Okay, quick snapshot. Yes, I am a single mother of two boys that are almost 11 and the older one is 12. So they're about 16 months apart. So I did two babies in diapers at once. It was a wild time. And they're boys, so they're nuts. My older son does have special needs. He is what we used to call Asperger's, but now high functioning autism is the correct term now.
Okay.
And he also has ADHD and sensory processing disorder, which is not a widely known disorder.
Hmm.
So he is what we don't use the word normal in the special needs world, and I think we should not use it in mental illness community either. We say
Hmm.
non-neurotypical.
Got it.
So he's not neurotypical, but he's fascinating.
Just saying, right?
Yeah, he's lovely and sweet, but he definitely has exclaimed more than once, the world makes no sense. And I'm like, that is correct.
Yeah.
So I have the two boys and they're wild kids. I started this web design business after being laid off a couple of times.
Oh.
And I also suffer from autoimmune disease. So I have hypothyroid, which is really common, but I also have a very um, rare type of asthma called reactive airway disease.
Okay.
So my lung function is very low and compared to others. So something like COVID is very dangerous for me, but so
Hmm.
is like the air. So I
Right.
kind of joke that everybody has joined my world because during spring and fall here in Phoenix, I have to wear a mask outside in regular times.
Right.
So
Right.
now I'm just not the only one wearing a mask. It's kind of nice. Um, but but
Can we
yeah,
talk inclusion?
yeah, exactly. So, I have a stack of issues that I deal with on a daily basis, and I am probably one of those joyous, fun people that nobody would expect to have
Mhm.
depression. But yeah, I decided after being laid off a couple of times, and my kids are now doing online school permanently. It's so
Okay.
much better for my older son with special needs. He does so much better in school when he can just be by himself, and my younger son likes it too. So I wanted to be home with them. I wanted to make sure I could work from home,
Hmm.
and I just decided I don't want anybody else to be in charge of my paycheck, my life, whether I have a job tomorrow.
Love
Nobody
it.
else's decision but mine.
Hmm.
So I started this web design business. I'm also a writer, so I ghost write a couple of blogs.
Okay.
So it looks like it's coming from the owner of the website and blog, but these are people that I've done websites for that then I do a monthly blog for them as well. And
Got
I
it.
do some content writing. But mostly the bulk of my business is the website design,
Love it.
which I love. And I love color and personality. So
Mhm.
my big thing is taking someone's personality and showing that through design so that when they meet you, once if they've seen your website and they meet
Mhm.
you, those two things should be consistent.
Love it.
So they're like, I already get your vibe. I saw your website, you know? That's my little summary.
Love it. Love it. And I think now more than ever, it's so important for us to be able to take charge of our own
Yes.
financial resource, you know.
Hmm.
Um, let's face it, through life, we gather so many different experiences, each of which usually builds on the last. And we can put those to use ourselves. You know, there's no reason for anybody to have to put us in a little cubicle and say, this is the one skill I want you using, from
Right.
here on in.
And
Yeah.
I
Love
understand there are people that are very happy in that scenario. It's
that.
just, I think more and more, like, especially through COVID, I think a lot of people are realizing that working from home is possible,
Right.
that it's better for their families, that they're
Mhm.
not commuting. I think I was talking to someone today about how she's like, I get so much more work done because I don't have to drive to and from work. I just get up. I don't even, she throws on yoga pants and she's at her computer and ready to go.
You
And she
betcha.
feels less tired because of
Hmm.
that.
Yeah.
So
I mean, and so many people commute more than an hour one way.
I know it's
You know,
insane.
life is too freaking short,
Right.
too short. So
Yeah.
great. Well, thank you for sharing with us about what you do. I just love
Mm.
the consistency theme of how you can take someone's personality and bring that over
Yeah.
to, the web space. Awesome. Tell us a little bit now, if you would, about when depression entered your life and what that experience was like for you.
So I was diagnosed with depression when I was like 9 or 10.
Wow.
So I was very little.
Mhm.
I was in the beginning of my life, my parents owned pizza shops. I come from a big Italian family. My parents owned pizza shops and they would like move to a place, build it, get it running, and then we'd move again. So we moved around a lot. And so it was just me
Mhm.
and my little sister. And I don't think I had any real signs there, but I was very emotional and dramatic. But I also was raised by an Italian mother, so that's to be expected. But
Love it.
I got into elementary school and struggled a lot with interpersonal relationships and with being teased or bullied or anything like
Mm.
that. I have a very vivid memory of laying on the floor of the elementary school hallway. And I don't even remember if I was crying or not. I was just laying there, and there were a couple other adults there, and the principal came and scooped me up and took me to the nurse's office.
Okay.
And so I have a couple of like vivid memories like that where it was like I like gave up on standing, I just
Yeah.
gave up on everything. I was
Wow.
also a bedwetter, so that was
Mm-hmm.
a factor. And I had no trauma in my life that would have
Mm-hmm.
made that happen. I have
Sure.
amazing parents who are still amazing and in love and adorable. And I have a beautiful sister who's same, we're very close. But so I didn't have any like childhood trauma that would have triggered that. It just
Mm-hmm.
was coming from my brain chemistry. So my mother luckily recognized it right away. This is the early 80s, so it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
popular to take your kid to
Yeah.
therapy, but she did. And she picked me up
Mm-hmm.
from school. I left school once a week to go to therapy. And unfortunately, one of the teachers, probably very well meaning, told the kids, oh, well, she has a doctor's appointment every week. So now these kids started saying that I was like contagious or that I was
Oh,
like, so I was kind of treated like a leper. It was rough.
yeah. Gosh.
So I had a really hard time in school. I was a theater kid, so I
Mm-hmm.
think that was an outlet for me. And once I got to high school, I met other theater kids and I was like president of my drama club and everything. So I was able to kind of channel it and be with my people. But the whole like elementary school and middle school time was a very difficult time for me.
I bet.
Then getting into puberty,
Mm-hmm.
I was very confused and I think it's so nice right now how much information there is out there, and there's the internet, which didn't exist at the time.
Right.
And so I think people have more resources, but it's very difficult as a child to not understand why you're different, not
Mm-hmm.
understand that it's just your brain chemistry, not understand that you were born that way, that
Right.
sort of thing. So it was a huge struggle. I felt like an outsider all the time. I never
Mhm.
felt like I was, even as I got into like theater and all of that, I still always kind of felt different.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that's the reality or my perception, but it was the reality of my perception
Mhm.
of it. It was that I felt like an outsider because I had this very huge weight to deal with.
Mhm. Wow, and at such a young age to be
Mm-hmm.
going through such a big, big thing.
Right.
I think for me that highlights two really big things that the world should know. Number
Yeah.
one, nothing, there's nothing that triggered it.
Right.
It ju it just was,
Right.
it was. And
Absolutely.
so I think what a classic example of showing that depression is a disease,
Right.
just like heart disease, just like
Right.
diabetes, just like high blood pressure.
Mm-hmm.
There are chemicals in our body that are just not doing the things that they should be doing. Can that be
Absolutely.
worsened by trauma? Yes. Can it
Oh
be
yeah. Yeah.
worsened? Yeah. But none of us just, in it
Yeah.
nobody would choose it, right?
No.
Nobody would ever go willingly down that road and say, I think that's for me. Yeah.
Right. Right.
So I
Exactly.
just think that's huge. And then also just I think the isolation that a
Yeah.
young child would feel. And that's what I feel like our middle daughter went through, who,
Yeah.
came on with things when she was about 13. And really,
Mm-hmm.
we thought, my husband and I married, she was 17, and we just thought we had a very unruly kid, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When she was in her 20s, we found out she was bipolar, manic depressive, and,
Yep.
she was able to get some treatment. But yeah, yeah. So
I,
you
I
never know.
think I think too, and I want to mention this just to give like a shout out to my family.
Uh-huh.
I did grow up here with my mom's side of the family, big Italian family. I
Mhm.
have 27 first cousins from both sides.
Uh-huh.
So I have a huge family. But I I didn't feel like I I mean, I felt a little isolated in that, but I had cousins. So even though I would
Great.
go to school and I didn't really have a lot of friends at school or whatever, I had family to come home to, and there were always people in my house. To have
Love it.
14 people in my house on a Tuesday was not like, it was not abnormal in growing up. People would just come over.
I
If you
love
watch
it.
my big fat Greek wedding, I promise you that was my life. So but yeah, I mean, I think that had a lot to do with my survival of it,
Sure.
is that I said I don't need that. And I actually had a therapist as an adult say, what's so funny about you, Toni, is that it never occurred to you to just act differently or change who you are in order to fit in. You just
Uh-huh.
went, wow, it's really sad nobody likes me, but I'm not going to change, because I had family.
There you
Partially,
go.
I was probably born that way a little bit, but I also, I had all this family that I could be with, and I was
Yeah.
extremely close to my grandmother, who was an artist, and so
Mhm.
I think I just had that support system at home. But again, to
Love
your
that.
point, I did not have trauma. I had a huge support system at home. I had tons of family that were really close and thought I was amazing. But you can still have a brain chemistry that
Right.
pushes you in a different direction
Mhm.
regardless of the amazing family you grow up in.
Exactly, exactly. Love, love, love your story. Um, Now tell me, can you share just a few things that you do on a regular basis, like on an everyday basis, to take care of yourself while you're working? And how does your workday
Mhm.
maybe look a little bit different because of the things you do to take care of yourself?
Well, first of all, I'm a huge advocate of medication
Mhm.
if it's right for you. I think
Sure.
it takes time. I would encourage anybody that is starting their medication journey and feels like that's something they need to add to their coping plan,
Yep.
or treatment plan, that they don't do like, oh, I went on this and I didn't like it, so I'm not doing it anymore. There are so many different drugs and so many different combinations. I'm very open about my combinations. I'm on both Zoloft and Wellbutrin,
Mhm.
which attack different receptors.
Mhm.
So that's very important for me to have both. But without medication, I am not functional. So
Mhm.
medication's the first thing.
Okay.
And then the other thing is I've worked from home for many, many years, actually, with another company that I was with. I worked maybe 6 years from home with
Okay.
toddlers. But
Before it was cool.
before it was cool. But I have little coping things that I do with my brain where I know certain tasks go with certain music or certain podcasts or something. So I do have kind of a hyperactive brain. So they also wanted to diagnose me with ADHD, which probably was the truth, but whatever. So I need to have this part of my brain active so that I can use this part. Otherwise I get distracted. So like if I'm doing a longer writing assignment, I will listen to classical music. I grew up in dance as a ballerina. So classical music to me is like yoga to other people, or ballet is like yoga, So I use classical music for that. If I'm going to be doing more of like a fun time post, I'll listen to like 90s rock, Foo Fighters and stuff like that. So I can feel my angsty teenage self when I started writing. I kind of get inspiration from that. With design, I have a couple of podcasts I listen to. I know that like there are moods that are good for true crime and there are moods that are not, so I can kind of, after, living with this for almost 40 years, I'm over 40, but but living with this since being quite young, I know how I can feel it coming and I can go, okay, this is what I need to stabilize. And because come from a loud environment and from a very musical family, music and talking, those things need to be happening all the time. My house is never quiet, ever.
I love that.
Yeah. So music is very important to me. It really does make my life better. I drink a lot of water. And I give myself, so I like to make a list every day. I have a whiteboard over here that you can't see from here, but I make a list every day that's for the next day. And my thing is I kind of figured out what's a good amount of work that I can do without overwhelming myself or kicking myself or anything like that. I say, these are the tasks I absolutely want to complete tomorrow. So then no matter when I do it, and I am lucky that I'm basically a freelancer, so I work for myself. So I don't have anybody to report to, but I may get those things done from 4 to 8 at night or in the morning or whatever. And I just say to myself, I'm going to accomplish these few things. And once I accomplish that, I know I've done what I'm supposed to do for the day. So that gives me because I will beat myself up. I'll say, man, I didn't get that done. I'm so dumb. Why am I doing that? And the bad self-talk starts. So if I can be prepared and organized, then I can make sure that I feel good about what I did that day. Having the kids in the house and having them interrupt me with school questions and stuff like that, can take away from that. But because I'm very organized with my workload, I can handle that. If I'm disorganized or if the house is a mess, I'm seriously like getting hit with Nerf bullets sometimes while I'm writing, but I'm like, not now. But if the house is really messy, I'll tell the boys, guys, you need to pick up the living room because I have no door to my office. It's just like a nook. So I'm like, you guys have to clean this up because my eyeballs are I'm experiencing anxiety from the mess. My desk, I have to have things just a little bit more put together so that calms me. So I guess that would be a couple of things. I also have little notes like this little note is on my wall up here and it just says, I always figure it out. So
I love that.
These phrases change from time to time depending on what's going on, but I'm old school. I like whiteboards and Post-its. So I always have something like this. And then the other one I have up here says, I get to ... So like anytime I'm starting to think down, I can go, I get to be with my kids all day. I get to work from home. I get to lie down when I don't feel well, especially with the autoimmune stuff too. I have a lot of joint issues. So, just having little notes like that is really helpful for me because I know they're there. I know I can look to them.
I love
and I
that.
can tell myself those things.
That is so wonderful. I love what you're doing, and so much of what you mentioned kind of mirrors a little bit of what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I think my philosophy is one of intentional living and
Mm-hmm.
always knowing and living in alignment with what I value most. And so, with that
Mm-hmm.
being said, I like to create my daily top three, my weekly
Mm-hmm.
top three goals. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just so much more doable. And that leads to a life of
Right.
balance, right? And
Yes.
I was really quite scared coming into the entrepreneurial space in August of this year, coming back to it. I'd been in it
Mm-hmm.
before, but it was a little nerve-wracking for me to wonder, how am I going to do this with depression and, make
Mm-hmm.
things happen? But I really feel like, man, is there not a better place for a woman with depression than the entrepreneurial space? Because
Right.
we have that flexibility,
Right.
to do so much that whereas if you're in conventional work, it's hard to call in. It's hard to
Well,
own that,
yeah. And the
Um,
thing about writing down those goals for the day and making them manageable, like don't overdo your list,
mhm,
like make it three
mhm.
or four things,
Yep.
is that you, I think that before I most likely accomplished more than that, but I didn't,
Mhm.
because I didn't have it written down and I wasn't checking it off.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I accomplished those things. I think that's something with the depressive brain is that we are wired to look at the negative. So
Exactly.
we'll look at what we didn't do and not what we
Mhm.
did do.
Right.
So if you write those things down, then you go, oh yeah, I did that, that, and that today. Oh, I guess I
Mhm.
did accomplish something, you know?
Mhm.
So it just kind of helps your brain rewire to
Yeah.
think of the positive and the accomplishments.
For sure. For sure. I just love that. All right. And kind of an interesting question. I ask it every single week. Is there anything positive that has come into your life as a result of you having had this experience with depression?
Oh, I saw this question on your email and I was giving it a lot of thought. And I think there are two things. One, I think I am generally more compassionate toward people
Mm,
who struggle.
mhm,
The judgmental kind of feeling, like I can often look at somebody and go, that's they're in a tough spot. Oh, that person is picking their battles. I get it. You know,
mhm,
especially with children. A couple years ago, there was a child that lived down the street, and all the parents in the neighborhood, he was kind of a mess. And the
mhm,
parents in the neighborhood were all going, well, I won't let my kids play with that kid. And the
mhm,
whole time I was like, I know that child's household because they live just down the street. I know the parents. I know what that kid is dealing with. So my perspective was not, how's that affecting my child? My perspective was, I've grown up with issues and I feel for that child. So
mhm,
I talked to
mhm.
my kids about it and they weren't allowed to play with him, just the two of them, but they could do it in groups. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
if you've got a group where people are going to make some good decisions and maybe he can follow you, that's fine.
Mhm,
So there's that. And then with my son being non-neurotypical,
mhm.
I understand what it's like for your brain to be wired differently and for other people to look at you and go, what? Or like,
Yeah.
snap out of it. I'm like, snap out of what? I was never in it. Like, this is
Yeah.
it. This is the brain. Like, this is how it functions. I can't snap out of something.
Right.
It's like there was never a typical, normal, whatever place
Mhm,
for me to be. This is it. So looking at him and raising a child who has these issues, being able
mhm,
to talk through and say to him, your brain works a different way. This is how they're thinking. This is how you're thinking. And this is why that thought process benefits you,
mhm.
and how you can help others with this thought process. So, and the fact that I got him into therapy really early. I mean,
Mhm.
he does therapy every week, a teletherapy session with this
Yeah.
adorable girl, and they go through coping mechanisms and stuff like that, and
Love it.
so I'm able to direct that process and be a support in
Mm,
that process because I've been through it myself.
I love that. Mhm. I love that. And
Mhm.
I think it's very interesting, I think, how this huge burden
Mhm.
can provide some blessings, albeit,
Mhm.
sometimes they're a little harder to find. But I would not be the woman I am today were it not for this experience.
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
yeah, and it's
It
just it's
really, I think it really does drive compassion. I think special
mhm,
needs moms too. I mean, you can find people everywhere that are what,
mhm,
nasty or whatever,
yep,
but in the special needs moms community, it's just very like, what are you gonna do? I was at a
mhm.
birthday party where my child swore at me and jumped the fence and ran down the street. That was a special day, but it happens, with him. And
Yeah.
so, but the parents were so great because there's such more awareness and understanding of
Mhm.
different neuro, disorders and things like that, that I didn't feel like I felt supported.
Yeah,
And
that's great.
it's, when you're at a birthday party with a bunch of other parents and your kid swears at you and jumps the fence and runs down the street, you're a little embarrassed.
Yes.
You're like, oh my God, everybody's going to think I'm awful. And all their kids are going to start saying things that they shouldn't say and blah, blah. And instead, it was the opposite. And
Mhm.
so I think, as these things become more and more public and people like you and I talk more and more about what it's like, it
Mhm.
opens up the entire community to being more understanding and more compassionate and all of that. So
Mhm. For sure, for sure. And lastly, before I give you the stage here in just a minute, what is there, if there were one thing that you would want the world to know about depression or mental illness in general, if there's one thing that you would just want to shout from the rooftops and make sure everybody knows, what would that be?
this is another really tough question because there's probably 15 things that I'd like people to know. And people always talk about, how it feels when it's that like middle ground where you're not lying on the floor, but you also can't really get the energy to do everything. That's a hard thing for people to understand if they've never been through it. But one thing
Mhm.
that I tell people a lot when I've been super, super dark, like
Mhm.
suicidal dark, what people sometimes, and I don't know if everybody experiences this, but I sometimes feel good in that space. Not good
Mhm.
like I feel good, but like good like this is where I'm supposed to be. And I think there's something about my brain chemistry being natural, like if I'm off meds, where like
Mhm.
that's my natural brain chemistry, where I feel at home there. And
Mhm.
so it's even more difficult to pull out of it because I
Ah.
really just want to sink into the corner of my couch and be in it.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so the will to get out of it when it feels very natural for your brain to feel that way,
Mhm.
it's not like I'm sitting there going, oh, I'm depressed and I really want to eat something fun to make myself happy. No, I'm sitting there going, all I want to do is be one with this couch and this blanket and this music and never leave again. And
Yeah.
it's what you want to do in that moment. So
Mhm.
to understand that you're not being miserable and being depressed, or being sad and being depressed, are two different things.
Mhm.
I'm not
Yep.
just sad, I literally can't get up.
I
you
can't
know
do it. Yeah.
yeah. And so I think
Mhm.
that's a really difficult thing for people. Think, oh, I'm depressed, oh, you're sad. No, it's not the same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So
I love that. I love
yeah.
that. And I was one who was told, snap out of it.
Right.
I was high functioning,
Hmm.
owner, CEO of a hospice agency, had an
Yeah.
adult care center, and all of a sudden I just couldn't get out of bed anymore.
Yeah.
And, and then I was crying for weeks and I didn't know
Hmm.
why. But the thing was, I remember my husband said to my mother, who wanted me to snap out of it, he said, telling her to snap out of it is like telling a paraplegic to get up and walk.
Right.
She can't do it. She may want
Right.
to, but she
Right.
can't. And it's not like, and oh, the guilt for wanting to, right? And then not
Right.
being able to do it. So, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Like people think, oh, you want to like ruin your job and career and
yeah,
family. That's what you want out of life. You made this
right.
decision on purpose. Like that's
Yeah.
crazy. We wouldn't do that.
Nobody would
So
ever want it. Yeah.
no, no, you want to be there. And I've
Yeah.
apologized to my kids at times where I'm like, I'm sorry I'm not a fun mom. And they're like, you're fun, and they, try to make me feel better. They're very sweet. But sometimes I feel like I'm not fun because I'm like, I
Hmm.
just want to lay here and have my headphones on. You guys do what you gotta do. I just mommy
Yeah.
needs time. And I think it's good too that they I've learned to like kind of set boundaries in that way and say, you know what, it's okay for you to say, I want to be alone for a little while. I need some alone time. So that's like a big phrase in our house. I need some alone time. And then we go to, you know, you can go to your room. They have separate rooms, so they can go to their room and just be by themselves. And I want them to know that that's okay to say. You can say, I would like some alone time. Because that is one downside to being in a big Italian family, is that no no privacy. Everybody knows everything. You tell one person something, the whole family knows in 10 minutes. You know, it's like,
oh man.
So having that boundary, I think, is really healthy.
I love that. I love that. All right, lady. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you again for sharing your story with us and taking the time. But I also want to give you a few minutes to just chat with our audience here on YouTube about a little more about your business and any special offers that you may have going on, and just, explaining a little bit more about what you do.
Okay. So as I kind of said at the beginning, my little shtick is is that I really like to draw out the personality of my clients and put it into the design. So even when I write, I mentioned that I like ghost write. What I do is I like to have these Zoom conversations with clients, because I typically don't ever meet anyone in person, even before COVID. And I work with people in different states and stuff. You know, I can work with people anywhere. But I like to get to know them, and I like to get to know their voice. So like at the top of my website, it says your website, your voice. When I write, I'm literally thinking in their voice. Okay. So I hear their voice. I hear their verbiage. What kind of words would they use? What kind of things would they say? When I start a project with a new client, I do a brand board, which basically has, the color scheme, some pictures that are inspirations, some fonts, things like that. And we kind of go through that design process first, so that we get on the same page visually, and then I create the site from there. Okay. I am trained in like sales page design and that sort of thing. So I understand things like user experience, which is a really big deal right now. Oh, I hope you didn't hear that. That was my dryer going off. Loud buzzer. The user experience is a really big deal right now. It used to just kind of be part of the design world, but now you can actually get a degree in it. But I will sit there when I'm organizing a website. I will sit there and look at, okay, here's all the things that people would want to know from the website. Wherever I am on that website, can I go through this list and get to those places? I also think of things, there are scrollers and there are clickers. So there's some people that will scroll through a huge long sales page and and they want to see all of it. I'm not one of those people. I like to click. Okay, click to the next thing. So I look at it from both perspectives as well. So that's just a couple of tips if you're designing your own place, your own space or whatever. But those are the things that I really care about. And then I just really want that introduction to be seamless. I've seen your website. I get your vibe. Now I want to meet you. And I think in the world today, in the business world right now, that's extremely important, because if you have a blue and white corporate looking website, it doesn't draw people in. If your buttons, your little click call to action buttons, are the same color as everything else on your page, people aren't going to be drawn to it. So little things like that are things that I'm constantly educating myself. I'm constantly learning, and I'm constantly keeping up on those types of trends.
Love that.
So, and I have worked with entrepreneurs for many, many years. Since the beginning. I started out as a small business banker. So I worked with entrepreneurs in that space. And then I was an operations manager for a couple of small businesses, helped them grow. And now I'm on my own. So I have always really enjoyed, there's something about the entrepreneurial personality type that I just really enjoy. Especially women who, I work with men too, and they're great. But especially like women that go, hey, I know what I'm doing. I'm just going to do it myself. Like, I love that. So I love working one-on-one with the business owner. So I don't work with super big businesses. I usually work with somebody where the person who looks at the website will most likely meet the owner as well.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. So that's what I do. I did create a fun little coupon code for just your people.
Awesome.
I have two different ways that you can work with me. You can either buy a package on my website, which is there's 3 different packages for website design, or you can do a Zoom call with me, tell me exactly what you want, and I will put a package together for you.
Okay.
But if you either put in the Zoom call notes, or if you purchase something and put in positively, then you, for positively Teresa, I didn't want to make it too long. So positively, you will get a 30% discount on those.
Oh my gosh, what a great,
That's
great
for your
deal.
people.
Oh my
Yep.
gosh. Well, thank you, thank you, thank you for that. All right.
Absolutely.
All right.
So real quick before we go, because I know we talked
Okay.
about this before we went live.
It's okay.
My company's name is Parapluie Design and Marketing. Parapluie means umbrella in French. My ex-husband's French. My kids have French names. It's like a whole French thing. And I do speak a little French. So Parapluie. And so I kind of talk about everything being under my umbrella. So come on under my umbrella. We're going to work together. But yeah, Parapluie is how you pronounce it. And there's like a little thing at the top of my website that tells you how to pronounce it too.
Oh, awesome. Awesome.
So
Okay. Well, I will be putting all of that information, the discount code and the link to Toni's website in the description of this video. So please feel free to check that out. And Toni, I do want to say thank you for being our special guest today and allowing us the opportunity to get to know you and share your story. I just, what a journey you've had. And I just congratulate you on where you are and you know what you're doing, because I think you're an inspiration to a lot of people, and certainly I am inspired hearing your story today. So thank you very much, and
thank you for letting me share.
you're welcome. And for everyone else, we will see you next week on the Wednesday Spotlight. Thanks.